After I had agreed to the paternity test to prove I had done nothing wrong, everything became even more tense. My husband, who had already begun to doubt our daughter and demand the test, decided to stay at his parents' house for 3 weeks after I gave birth. This not only hurt me, but also left me feeling incredibly alone as I cared for our newborn. My mother-in-law also did nothing to ease the situation, calling to warn me that if the test showed my husband wasn't the father, she would make sure I paid a heavy price in the divorce. These words only made me feel even more stressed and anxious. Even with my sister's help, I couldn't escape the feeling of exhaustion from living under suspicion. Every time I looked at our daughter, I wondered if there was something I didn't know, if I was being viewed as untrustworthy in my husband's and his family's eyes. I even began to feel as if I were living in a psychological battle with no way out. When the test results finally arrived, I felt a mix of anticipation, nervousness, and some worry. My husband and I sat down together to view the results, and what I didn't expect was his shock. When he saw the results, his face was completely stunned, his eyes wide, not believing what he was seeing. I couldn't help but feel relieved and find some humor in his reaction, because in the end, all his doubts and worries had been resolved. In that moment, I blurted out, "I told you so," and couldn't stop laughing at his stunned expression. However, my husband's reaction wasn't what I expected. He immediately became furious and criticized me for laughing in such a situation when he was feeling embarrassed and confused. He yelled at me, upset that I wasn't more understanding of his feelings, that I didn't realize how he felt when he had doubted both me and our child. I was shocked at his intensity while I simply wanted to release some of the tension from the past 3 weeks. Afterwards, my husband decided to return to his parents' house to think things over. Although the paternity test proved he was the father, I couldn't understand why he acted the way he did. Was I truly wrong to laugh at him? Was it just a natural response after all the stress we'd been through? Or did I really hurt him while he was feeling defeated and embarrassed? After he saw the test results and realized he was the father, I couldn't control my emotions. I felt a relief and some humor when I saw his shock. It was a moment of release after all the anxiety and tension I'd been enduring. In my mind, I just wanted to say, "I told you so," because I knew the result would be this way. But when I said that and laughed at his reaction, I didn't expect it to make everything worse. My husband looked at the results with wide eyes, still in disbelief. He stared at the paper, mouth agape, unable to speak. I couldn't stop laughing at his surprise, at the disbelief he was going through. It was a strange feeling, but I genuinely felt like a burden had been lifted off my shoulders. But what I didn't expect was his reaction afterward. He suddenly turned to me, face full of anger, and scolded me for laughing at him. My husband explained that I didn't understand his feelings, that in that moment of embarrassment and confusion I was kicking him while he was down, and that this hurt him. I hadn't thought about his feelings then, only about relieving the tension I'd been under for the last 3 weeks. He didn't realize that I had been living with the feeling of being doubted and mistrusted the entire time. And all I wanted was a little space to breathe, to not feel like I was being judged throughout the whole process. Our relationship had been tense for a while, and this incident only made everything worse. After the argument, he decided to go back to his parents' house to think. I felt an emptiness, as if everything had changed in our relationship. It wasn't just the test result, it was the feeling that he couldn't understand my emotions. I had tried so hard to prove I wasn't doing anything wrong, but in that moment, it felt like we had only grown further apart. After the argument, I couldn't help but ask myself if I had truly been wrong for laughing and saying, "I told you so." Was it a release for a mother exhausted by suspicion? Or did I truly hurt him when he was feeling humiliated? This question lingered in my mind, and I didn't know how to resolve it. After our daughter was born with blonde hair and blue eyes, unlike both of us, my husband demanded a paternity test. Although I explained that newborns can have lighter hair and eyes that may darken over time, he refused to listen and threatened divorce if I didn't comply. The test results ultimately confirmed he was the father, but his reaction made it impossible for me not to laugh. Was I wrong to laugh at him, or was it my way of releasing the tension? It all started when our daughter was born and we saw she had blonde hair and blue eyes. I thought it was perfectly normal, as some babies are born with lighter features that later darken. However, my husband was shocked and couldn't accept this. He began to doubt the baby's paternity and demanded a paternity test. Despite my attempts to reassure him that this was normal, he insisted on the test, even threatening divorce if I didn't agree. To ease his anxiety, I reluctantly agreed to the paternity test to prove I had nothing to hide. Honestly, it was painful and hurtful. I had never done anything wrong, and his suspicion made me feel disrespected. For 3 weeks after our baby was born, my husband decided to stay at his parents' house to think things over, while I stayed home to care for the baby. During that time, my mother-in-law called and warned me that if the test proved my husband wasn't the father, she would do everything in her power to make sure I lost everything in the divorce. Even though I had my sister's support, I still felt incredibly exhausted and stressed. Living in an atmosphere of doubt and lack of trust made me unsure of what to do. Finally, the test results came in, and my husband and I sat down to review them. My husband looked at the results with a stunned expression, his eyes wide in disbelief. The results confirmed he was indeed the father. And his reaction made me laugh. I couldn't help but feel relieved and even find some humor in the situation, as his doubts were finally cleared up. However, he didn't find this humorous at all. He immediately got angry and scolded me for laughing at him in his moment of embarrassment and confusion. We argued for a while, with him yelling at me, and I just stood there, feeling lost in my own relationship. Was I wrong for laughing and saying, "I told you so," or was it just my way of relieving the stress I had been under for the past weeks? After the heated argument with my husband, he decided to return to his parents' house to think things over, and I was left alone with my conflicting feelings. I never imagined that my words, "I told you so," and my laughing would lead to everything escalating like this. Initially, I felt relief and released tension after being doubted for so long, but now I felt lost, as if I had unintentionally hurt him when he needed understanding. My mother-in-law called right after my husband left, criticizing me for hurting him when he was feeling embarrassed and confused. She told me I had kicked him while he was down, and even texted me the next morning to say I had acted wrongly. Her words made me feel like not only my husband, but his whole family didn't understand my feelings. I never intended to hurt him, but I couldn't deny that my actions had an unexpected impact. I thought about everything that had happened. My husband had demanded the paternity test due to his doubts about our daughter, which made me feel hurt and mistrusted. I had agreed to the test just to prove I had nothing to hide. During the 3 weeks he was at his parents' house, I had to care for the baby alone, while facing threats from my mother-in-law about losing everything in the divorce if the test didn't prove he was the father. All this pressure seemed to go unnoticed and unshared by him. However, when the test results came back and confirmed he was the father, I thought it would be an opportunity for us to release the tension and continue our lives normally. But his reaction only complicated things further. He felt embarrassed and hurt, and my attempt to relieve the stress by laughing was misunderstood. I didn't know how to explain that my laughter was simply a way to release the tension after living with suspicion for so long, but I couldn't deny that I had hurt him. Now, when I think back, I ask myself if I was wrong to laugh and say, "I told you so," or was it just a natural reaction from a mother who had been carrying doubt and mistrust all this time? Our relationship was being pushed to its limits, and I didn't know if we could restore the trust we once had. Could I find a way to explain my feelings to him, or would we forever be lost in these misunderstandings?